hey-wa-zee. Hey-wa, hey-wa, hey-wa-zee. Hi-ya-ya, loud. Hi-ya-ya, real loud. Hi-ya-ya, hi-ya-ya. Now getting softer. Hi-ya, hi-ya, hi-ya-ya. Hi-ya, 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 ya. Hi-ya, hi-ya, hi-ya. Are you ready? Hi-ya, ya. Ready? Hey! Okay, good. All right, well, here's the story, and in the story, you'll have a chance to sing, and it's very important to the story. Once, long ago, when only Indians lived on our land, in a small Indian village, there lived a boy whose parents had both died and he had no family. So the Indians in his tribe decided to send him to a nearby Indian village to live with his uncle, because Indians knew that no child should be without a family. Well, when he got to the new village and he started to live with his uncle, even though his uncle was the most important man in the whole village, because everyone said that that boy's uncle was the greatest hunter. And when he would go up in the hills, he would come back with enough meat for the entire village. But he did not treat that Indian boy kindly. In fact, he paid no attention to him. He just acted as if he wasn't even there. He didn't even call him by his name. He said things like, "Hey, boy, get out of here. I don't want to be bothered with you." The boy was very frightened and very unhappy. Now, the Indians in the village knew that that man was not a good man, and they said, "He treats the boy unkindly. He has a crooked mind." And that's what the Indians said when they said he had a crooked mind. He does crooked mind things. Well, it means he did things that are not nice. And one day, he woke up in the morning and he had an idea. He said, "I don't want to be bothered with this boy anymore. Today, I will get rid of him." And so that morning, he said to the boy, "Boy, come with me. We are going hunting." Well, the boy was very excited because his uncle was the best hunter in the village, and he had never asked the boy to go. He had always gone by himself. So he followed his uncle, but he noticed something strange, because he had watched his uncle many times go up the path to the forest, but this time he went on a different path, and it was a part of the forest that the boy had never been, but he had heard strange stories. He had heard that bad things happened in that part of the forest, and he was very frightened, and he stayed very close to his uncle. And finally, they came to a clearing, and there on the rocky hillside, there was a cave. And that cave had just a round opening. And the uncle said, "Boy, you see that cave? There are animals living in that cave. You must crawl in that cave and chase the animals out." Well, the boy didn't want to do that. He was very frightened, but he was also frightened of his uncle, and he knew he should do what the uncle said. And so the boy climbed into that circle, and pretty soon he was in the cave, and it was very dark, except for the light that came through the opening. But he looked around. He didn't see any animals, and he turned around to go back, and just as he was ready to crawl out that opening, suddenly it looked as if a rock was pushed across that entrance. And then it was dark, and he was all alone, and he thought, that is why my uncle brought me here. He just meant to leave me here. He meant to leave me here in this cave. And that boy began to cry. But then something happened. Then he remembered long ago his mother had taught him a song. And she said, if ever you are frightened, if ever you are lonely, if ever you need a friend, you must sing this song. And so that boy, sitting in that dark cave, he began to sing the song. And he sang, see if you can do it with me. He sang it very softly at first. I, hey, wa, see. Hey, wa, hey, wa, hey, wa, see. Hi, ya, ya. Hi, ya, ya. Hi, ya, hi, ya, hi, ya, ya. And then he stopped. He listened. It seemed that he heard people singing the same song on the other side of the rock that blocked the entrance to the cave. He said, can that be? I'll sing again. And this time you help me. But you'll be the people outside the rock. Or I, hey, was he. And then he listened and he heard, I, hey, was he. There was somebody there. And then he said, hi, wa, zi. Your turn. And then they all sang together, hi-ya, ya, hi-ya, ya, hi-ya, ya, hi-ya, ya. And then before the song was finished, someone pushed that rock away from the entrance. The light shone in, and the boy crawled out into the bright sunlight. Blinking, he could hardly see. It was so bright, and he'd been in that dark cave. And he saw many, many animals all gathered around, and they were all looking right at him. And then an old grandfather beaver walked up to him and said, "Grandson, we heard your song. Do you need a friend?" And the boy said, "I need a friend. Have you come to help me?" And old beaver said, "We will all help you." And the boy looked around. There were tiny moles and squirrels and chipmunks and deer and foxes and wolves and bears. He said, "But grandson, where is your family? Why were you trapped in the cave?" And the boy said, "I have no family. I had only my uncle, and my uncle doesn't want me." And the beaver said, "We will be your family. Just pick any one of us. Who would you like to live with?" And the boy thought, and he looked at all the animals, and he said, "Well, why don't you tell me how you live, and then I can choose." And so the little mole spoke first. He said, "Oh, we live under the earth, and we eat roots and juicy worms, and we crawl around under the earth. Would you like to live with us?" But the boy shook his head. And the next one said, was the beaver. And the beaver said, "Oh, you would like to live with us. We live in the river, we swim, and we eat fish, and we build dams." And the the boy thought, no. And then all the different animals told them how they lived. But then the last one was a big mother bear and her 2 little cubs. And she said, "Oh, grandson, I know you'd like to live with us. We have a fine life. Why, we roam through the forest. We eat berries and honey. Oh, and my 2 little cubs here, they'll be your playmates. They'll play with you whenever you want." And you know what the boy said. He said, "Yes, yes, I want to be a bear." And so he went to live with the bear family. And it was just like Mother Bear said. He was so happy, and they roamed around eating honey and what else? Berries. And the best part was the little cubs became his playmate, and they would wrestle and play with him. But then something strange. Every time their little claws would scratch him, right where it scratched him, out would grow black hairs like the bears. And pretty soon, that little Indian boy was covered with black hair. He looked just like a little bear. Well, one day as he was out walking with his bear family, Mother Bear said, "Shh, stop, listen." And they heard. She said, "Those are footsteps of a hunter. We must run." And so the mother bear and the boy and the 2 little cubs, they ran as fast as they could. They ran across swamps, over hillsides, and at last they came to a clearing. But they could hear the hunter, and the hunter was getting closer and closer. And Mother Bear said, "See that hollow log? We will hide inside the log. Perhaps the hunter will not find us." And so they all crawled inside and were very quiet. And the boy waited. And then the boy smelled something. He said, "That's smoke." For what the hunter had done, he had built a fire and was sending smoke in the log to drive the animals out. But right at that minute, the boy remembered. He remembered, I'm not really a bear. I'm a human, just like that hunter. And he called out. He said, "Don't hurt my family." And that minute, the smoke stopped, and the boy scrambled out of the log. And he looked at the hunter, and you know who the hunter was.
His uncle.
The hunter was his uncle, but his uncle didn't recognize him, and you know why. Because he looked just like a bear. But there was something about him, and as he walked towards his uncle put out his hand like this and touched him. And the minute he touched him, all those black hairs fell off. And the uncle says, "Nephew, is it really you? Are you alive?" He said, "I came back to the spot after I left you here because I knew in my heart I did a crooked mind thing. But when I came back, the stone was pushed aside, and there were footprints of many, many animals, and I thought they had eaten you." And the boy said, "The animals are my friends." He said, "I live